Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Meet Lily Thompson, a young woman who found herself in a situation she never saw coming. The only thing on her mind that day was surviving the next few months and making it to her next paycheck. Lily had worked in the corporate world for a while, but this new job opportunity promised the stability she had been longing for. She was good at her job, but there was something about this company and the CEO that felt different. The man behind the office door, Mr. Thomas Blackwood, was known as a shy, introverted CEO, one who preferred to stay in the background and avoid the spotlight. But Lily had no idea that the man she would soon marry was hiding something far more significant than his quiet nature. You see, the CEO wasn't just a quiet businessman, he was a millionaire with his own reasons for getting married. And when Lily first met him, all she knew was that she needed the job. At least that's what she thought. Lily had always been independent, confident in her own abilities. But something about the way Mr. Blackwood seemed so distant made her wonder if she was really prepared for what was about to unfold. He offered her a job in the company, and soon after, things took a turn that neither of them could have predicted. But let's take a step back for a moment. Lily was in no place to turn down anything that offered security. Her life had been anything but easy, and taking a leap into the unknown didn't feel so terrifying anymore. So when Mr. Blackwood proposed a marriage contract, something about the offer intrigued her. It wasn't about love, at least not at first. It was about convenience, security, and mutual benefit. She was skeptical, but in the end, she agreed. The arrangement seemed simple enough, a marriage contract that would benefit both of them. What Lily didn't expect was that in the process of becoming Mr. Blackwood's wife, she would discover the man behind the paper contract and the man behind his quiet demeanor. Little did she know, this marriage would be the beginning of something far more complex than she could have ever imagined. As the days passed, Lily settled into her new life. She had signed the contract, and now she was bound to a man she barely knew. At first, everything felt surreal. She was living in a penthouse, working alongside the CEO of Blackwood Enterprises, and yet she still felt like an outsider. Thomas Blackwood, her husband, was exactly as he had been described: shy, reserved, and not one to open up easily. He barely spoke to her outside of business hours, and when he did, it was always to discuss their joint responsibilities. There was no warmth, no affection, just a quiet understanding that they were married for practical reasons. Despite this, Lily could not ignore the subtle signs that he cared in his own way. He would occasionally leave her little notes with reminders about her day or small gestures like ensuring her coffee was always prepared just the way she liked it. These were the things that made her wonder if there was more to this marriage than what had been agreed upon. But she couldn't deny the fact that she had entered this arrangement with one goal in mind: security. She had been struggling to make ends meet before, and now she had financial stability. Yet, as the days wore on, Lily found herself yearning for something more, something real. One evening, while she was returning from a business event, she saw Thomas sitting by the window in their living room. His back was turned to her, but she could see the faint glow of the city lights illuminating his face. It was rare for him to be home at this hour, and even rarer for him to be alone. Something about the sight made her heart ache. She approached him cautiously, unsure of what to say. "Thomas?" she said softly. He turned his head, surprised to see her standing there. For a moment, neither of them spoke. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice softer than usual. "I could ask you the same thing," Lily replied, crossing her arms. "I thought you'd be at the office." "I needed a break," he said, his voice carrying a note of vulnerability. "I've been working non-stop lately." Lily stood there, unsure of what to do. There was a part of her that wanted to reach out to him, to offer comfort, but she didn't know if he would accept it. They had been married for a few months now, and though they shared a roof, they were still strangers to each other in many ways. "I just wanted to check in," she said quietly, breaking the silence, "to see how you were doing." He smiled faintly, a look of appreciation crossing his face. "I'm fine, really." But Lily could tell there was something more to his words. There was a heaviness in his tone, a weight that he wasn't ready to share. It was then that Lily realized just how lonely Thomas must feel. He had spent so many years building his empire, burying himself in work, and yet, when it came to matters of the heart, he was still a stranger to himself, and so was she. They were both trapped in a marriage that, at its core, was not based on love. But as time went on, Lily couldn't help but notice the small changes in Thomas. He was beginning to open up to her in his own way. The quiet dinners they shared were no longer awkward. The conversations, though brief, had begun to feel more genuine. There were moments when Lily could see a flicker of something in his eyes, something that reminded her of the man he could be, not just the CEO. But was it enough? Was this marriage really what she had hoped for? Or was she simply falling for the idea of a man who was too afraid to show his true self? It was a question that lingered in the back of her mind as the days passed. One evening, as they attended a charity gala, something unexpected happened. Thomas, usually reserved and distant, took her hand as they walked into the ballroom. It was a small gesture, but it felt like a giant leap forward. As they moved through the crowd, Lily noticed that the guests around them were treating them differently. They no longer saw them as just business partners, but as a married couple. The way Thomas stood beside her, his hand still holding hers, made her realize something he was beginning to care. Maybe not in the way she had expected, but in a way that felt real and raw. As the night wore on, Lily found herself dancing with Thomas in the middle of the room. It was a simple waltz, nothing extravagant, but it felt like the first real moment they had shared as a couple. And for the first time since their marriage, Lily wondered if this could turn into something more. As the music played, she rested her head on his shoulder, feeling his heartbeat beneath her cheek. It was a small moment, but in that instant, she felt closer to him than she ever had before. She wasn't sure if this was the beginning of something beautiful, or just another fleeting moment, but for the first time she felt hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, this contract marriage could turn into something more than either of them had expected. As weeks passed, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing between her and Thomas. Their relationship, once bound strictly by the terms of the contract, was slowly transforming. It wasn't just the small gestures he made holding her hand at the gala, the subtle smiles they shared during dinner. It was something deeper. The way he listened to her, the way his eyes softened when they spoke about their pasts. It felt like they were building something more than just a marriage for convenience. Yet, despite these small moments of connection, Lily couldn't help but feel conflicted. She had entered this arrangement with no expectations of love, and now, her feelings were becoming more complicated. Was she falling for him, or was she simply clinging to the idea of what she had always wanted? One night, after a particularly exhausting day at the office, Lily found herself alone in their apartment. Thomas had stayed late at work, as usual, and she couldn't help but feel a pang of loneliness. The silence of the apartment seemed to stretch on, amplifying the uncertainty she felt. She had come to care for him in a way that went beyond the contract they had signed, but she didn't know if he felt the same way. Her thoughts were interrupted when the door opened, and Thomas walked in, looking more tired than usual. His suit was disheveled, and his eyes were dark with exhaustion. Without saying a word, he dropped his briefcase onto the sofa and collapsed into the chair. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The air was thick with unspoken words. Lily hesitated for a moment before speaking. "You look tired," she said quietly, her voice soft. "Maybe you should take a break." He looked up at her, and for the first time in a long while, she saw a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "I don't know how to stop," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "I've spent so many years building this company, and now I feel like I'm losing control of everything. I'm not even sure what I'm doing anymore." Lily's heart ached for him. She had known that he was driven, that he carried the weight of his company on his shoulders, but hearing him admit it out loud made her realize just how much pressure he was under. She walked over to him, sitting down beside him on the chair. "You don't have to do everything alone," she said softly. "I'm here. We're in this together." For a moment he said nothing. Then, to her surprise, he reached out and took her hand in his grip firm but gentle. "I don't deserve your kindness," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've kept you at arm's length, and you've still been there for me." Lily turned to face him, her heart racing. She had always known that Thomas was more than just a CEO, but in that moment, she realized that he was also someone who needed help, someone who needed love. They had both been so focused on their roles, the CEO and the contract wife, that they had forgotten to see each other as individuals. As they sat there, holding hands in the quiet of the apartment, something shifted between them. It wasn't a grand gesture, but it was a moment of clarity. They were no longer just two people bound by a contract. They were two people who had begun to care for each other in a way they hadn't expected. That night, as they lay in bed together, Lily couldn't help but wonder if this was the start of something new, something real. The next morning, as Lily prepared for another busy day at the office, She found herself thinking about the conversation they had shared. It wasn't just the words he had said, but the way he had looked at her, the way he had allowed himself to be vulnerable in front of her. It was a side of him she hadn't seen before, and it made her wonder if there was more to their marriage than just the contract. When she arrived at the office, she noticed something was different. There was a certain energy in the air, a sense of anticipation. She soon learned that Thomas had called a meeting with the entire team. As they gathered in the conference room, Thomas stood at the front, his usual reserved demeanor replaced with a newfound confidence. "I've realized something," he began, his voice strong. "I've been so focused on work that I've neglected the most important thing in my life, my family. And that includes my wife." Lily's heart skipped a beat as she realized what he was saying. This wasn't just a business meeting. This was Thomas, the shy CEO, opening up in front of everyone. "I want to do better," he continued, his gaze meeting hers across the room. "I want to be present, not just for the company, but for the people who matter most." The room fell silent as his words hung in the air. For the first time since their marriage, Lily felt a shift in their dynamic. This wasn't just a marriage of convenience anymore. It was becoming something real, something that had the potential to grow into something beautiful. As the meeting ended, Lily stayed behind, her mind racing. She had come into this marriage with no expectations, but now she was beginning to see the possibility of a future with Thomas, one that was based on more than just a contract. And for the first time, she wasn't sure where this journey would take them, but she was willing to find out. As the days passed, Lily began to notice a shift in her relationship with Thomas. His demeanor, once reserved and distant, had softened over the past few weeks. He seemed more relaxed around her, and their conversations had taken on a new depth. It wasn't just about work anymore. They talked about their lives, their hopes, and even their fears. For the first time since their marriage began, Lily found herself questioning everything she thought she knew about their arrangement. Was this the start of something real? Could Thomas, the shy CEO, really be falling for her? And if so, did she feel the same way? Lily wasn't sure. She had entered this marriage with no expectations of love, only the hope for stability. But now, her heart was starting to waver. One evening, as she was preparing dinner in their kitchen, Thomas walked in, looking unusually tired. His usual business suit had been replaced with a simple shirt and jeans, and he looked like he hadn't slept in days. Lily could tell something was off. "Hey, are you okay?" she asked, her voice gentle. He didn't answer immediately, but walked over to the counter and ran his fingers through his hair. "I'm fine," he said, though his tone didn't match the words. "Just a lot on my plate." Lily set the knife down and stepped closer to him. "You don't have to carry it all alone, you know," she said softly. "I'm here." He turned to her, his eyes filled with an exhaustion that went beyond just physical tiredness. "I don't know how to stop," he admitted, his voice low. "I've spent so many years building this company, and now I feel like I'm failing at everything else. I don't even know who I am outside of all of this." Lily reached out and placed a hand on his arm, her touch reassuring. "You're not failing," she said firmly. "You're just overwhelmed. You don't have to be perfect, Thomas. You don't have to do it all by yourself." For a long moment, he just stood there, looking at her, as if trying to decide whether to believe her. Finally, he sighed and nodded, as if the weight of the world had momentarily lifted from his shoulders. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he murmured. The words hit Lily harder than she expected, and for the first time she realized just how much she had come to care for him. It wasn't just about the stability he had given her, or the way he had slowly opened up to her over time. It was the way he trusted her, the way he let her in when he had been so closed off before. In that moment, Lily knew that this wasn't just a marriage of convenience anymore. It was something more, something that had the potential to change both of their lives. The next day, as Lily sat at her desk in the office, she received a call from Thomas. "Hey, I've been thinking," he said, his voice sounding more relaxed than it had in a long time. "I know I've been consumed with work lately, but I want to make more of an effort. I want to be there for you, for us." Lily's heart skipped a beat at his words. She hadn't expected him to say something like this, and it felt like a promise, one that could change everything. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice soft with curiosity. "I mean, I want to spend more time with you," he replied, a slight chuckle in his voice. "I want to do things together outside of work. I don't want this to just be a business arrangement anymore. I want it to be real." Lily couldn't help but smile at his words. It was the first time he had expressed such a sentiment, and it made her feel like they were finally on the same page. Maybe this marriage wasn't just about the contract after all. Over the next few weeks, Thomas kept his promise. They spent more time together, going on quiet walks, enjoying dinners without discussing business, and even taking short weekend trips to unwind. It wasn't a whirlwind romance, but it was steady and genuine, and for the first time, Lily felt like she was truly seeing Thomas for who he was. One evening, as they were walking through the park near their home, Thomas stopped and turned to her, his expression serious. "Lily," he began, his voice soft, "I need to tell you something." Lily looked up at him, sensing the weight of his words. "What is it?" she asked, her heart racing. He took a deep breath before speaking. "I never expected this. I never expected that I would feel this way about you." Lily's breath caught in her throat as he continued. "When we first got married, it was all about business. But now, I realize that I've come to care for you in ways I didn't think were possible. You're not just my wife, Lily. You're someone I can't imagine my life without." Her heart swelled with emotion at his words, and for the first time since their marriage began, Lily realized that she had fallen for him too. It wasn't just about the security he had given her anymore. It was about the man he had become, the person who was willing to let down his walls and let her in. As she looked into his eyes, she knew that this was only the beginning of something real, something that neither of them had expected, but something they both needed. Thomas had come into her life under unexpected circumstances, but now Lily knew that their story was far from over, and for the first time she was ready to embrace it. As the weeks passed, Lily and Thomas continued to grow closer. What had once been a marriage of convenience, bound by a contract, was slowly transforming into something real, something they hadn't expected. Thomas, the shy and reserved CEO, had begun to open up in ways that Lily never thought possible. The walls he had built around himself were starting to come down, and with each passing day, their connection deepened. But despite the progress, Lily couldn't help but feel a lingering uncertainty. She had entered this arrangement with no expectations of love, only the hope for security, but now she wasn't sure where she stood. Thomas had become more than just a business partner to her. He was becoming the man she never thought she would need. One evening, as they sat together in their living room, Lily glanced over at Thomas, who was reading through some reports. He looked up briefly, catching her gaze, and for a moment, everything seemed to stop. His eyes were softer now, not the cold, calculating gaze she had once seen when they first met. He seemed more human, more vulnerable. "Lily," he said, breaking the silence, "I've been thinking." She put down her book and turned toward him. "About what?" she asked, her heart racing slightly. "About us," he replied quietly. "I know things started out differently, but now I feel like I can't imagine my life without you in it." His words hit her harder than she expected. They were simple, yet so full of meaning. For the first time, she realized that he wasn't just talking about the contract, they were talking about something deeper, something more than just a marriage of convenience. "I never thought I'd say this," he continued, "but I think I've fallen for you." Lily's heart skipped a beat at his confession. She had always wondered if he felt the same way, but hearing him say it aloud made it all feel so real. It was like a weight had been lifted off her chest, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of love in their marriage. She looked at him, her voice barely a whisper. "I think I've fallen for you too." The words felt strange on her tongue, but they were true. She had spent so long convincing herself that this marriage was just a business arrangement, that she had convinced herself that love wasn't necessary. But now, with Thomas's confession, everything felt different. It felt like they had crossed a line they could never go back from. Over the next few days, things between them shifted. They were no longer just two people coexisting in the same space, they were a couple, truly for the first time. They spent their days together, talking about their future, their dreams and their fears. The connection between them grew stronger with each passing moment. But even as their relationship blossomed, there were still moments of doubt. Lily couldn't help but question whether this was real, whether their love was truly genuine, or just a byproduct of their circumstances. She had entered this marriage with nothing more than practical considerations in mind, and now, she wasn't sure if what they had was just a reaction to their shared situation. She decided to take a step back, to give herself some space to figure things out. One evening, as she sat on the balcony, staring out at the city skyline, Thomas joined her. He didn't say anything at first, simply standing beside her, his presence comforting. Finally, he spoke. "I know you're still unsure," he said softly. "I can see it in your eyes." Lily turned to face him, her heart heavy. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she admitted. "I didn't expect this. I didn't expect to feel this way about you." Thomas smiled, his eyes warm. "I didn't expect it either," he said. "But sometimes life works in unexpected ways. Maybe this was all meant to happen. His words were simple, but they gave her the reassurance she needed. She wasn't alone in this. They were both uncertain, both learning to navigate this new chapter of their lives together. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that was enough. In the days that followed, Lily made a decision. She would embrace the love that had slowly blossomed between them. She would no longer second-guess their connection, nor would she deny the feelings that had grown stronger with each passing day. They had started this journey as strangers, bound by a contract, but now they were something more. They were partners, not just in name, but in heart. And for the first time, Lily believed that their marriage wasn't just a business arrangement, it was a love story in the making. That afternoon, as they walked through the park near their home, Lily took Thomas's hand in hers. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of what the future might hold. She was ready to embrace it, ready to build a life with him, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. "I think we're ready for this," she said, her voice filled with certainty. Thomas squeezed her hand, a smile spreading across his face. "I've been ready for a long time." And as they walked together, hand in hand, Lily knew that whatever came next, they would face it together as a couple, no longer bound by a contract, but by something far stronger: love. As time passed, Lily and Thomas continued to grow closer, and their relationship blossomed in ways neither of them had expected. What had started as a business arrangement, a contract bound by convenience, was now evolving into a genuine partnership. They had spent months building trust, and though they had faced many challenges along the way, they were beginning to see each other in a completely different light. They were no longer two strangers forced into a marriage. They were two people who had learned to understand, support, and care for one another. Yet, despite the undeniable connection between them, a part of Lily still wondered if it was truly love, or if it was simply the product of their shared experiences. She had entered the marriage thinking that love would never be a part of the equation, but now she wasn't so sure. It was one of those quiet evenings when the world seemed to pause, and the weight of the day faded away. Lily sat by the window in their living room, gazing out at the city lights. The soft hum of traffic below was a comforting reminder that the world kept moving, even when everything felt still. Thomas joined her a few moments later, slipping into the chair beside hers. "What's on your mind?" he asked, his voice low and gentle. Lily didn't answer right away. She was still processing everything, the way their marriage had started and the way it had evolved. She had thought that she was just here for security, for stability, but now she couldn't deny that she had begun to fall for him. "I've been thinking," she began, her voice soft but steady. "I never expected this. I never thought I would feel like this about you." Thomas didn't respond immediately, but she saw his expression soften as he reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "I know," he said quietly. "I didn't expect it either." He paused, his thumb gently tracing the back of her hand. "When we first got married, I thought it would just be about business. I didn't think I was capable of feeling anything more. But now, I can't imagine my life without you." The words were simple, but they hit Lily like a wave. She had never heard him speak so openly before, and it made her heart swell. It was the kind of honesty she had always hoped for, the kind of connection she had dreamed of, but never thought possible. "I feel the same way," she whispered, her heart pounding. "I came into this marriage expecting nothing more than stability. But I found something I didn't expect, something real." For a long moment they sat there in silence, simply holding each other's hands, allowing the weight of their words to sink in. It was a moment of realization, a moment when both of them understood that their marriage was no longer just a business arrangement. It was a partnership built on trust, mutual respect, and yes, love. The next few weeks felt like a new chapter in their lives. They took things slower, spending more time together, enjoying the simple moments that had once been overshadowed by the complexities of their contract. They went on walks, cooked meals together, and even started making plans for the future. Thomas had become more open, not just with Lily, but with himself. He no longer carried the weight of the company on his shoulders alone. He learned to ask for help and to lean on Lily when things got tough. In return, Lily found herself opening up in ways she hadn't expected either. She began to realize that the life she had been seeking, one filled with love, stability, and connection, was no longer just a dream. It was becoming her reality. One evening, as they sat in their favorite park, Thomas turned to Lily with a look of quiet determination in his eyes. "I want to take the next step," he said. "I want to make this real, Lily. Not just for the company, not just for us, but for the future we can build together." Lily looked at him, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to make this marriage permanent," he said, his words steady but filled with emotion. "I want to make you my partner in every sense of the word, not just in name." His words took Lily by surprise. They had come so far, and yet it felt like they were just beginning. But in that moment, she realized that she didn't need anything else. She didn't need a grand gesture or a complicated proposal. All she needed was him, and that was more than enough. "Yes," she said, her voice filled with certainty. "Yes, I want that too." And so, as they sat there in the quiet of the park, holding hands and looking out at the stars above, they made a promise to each other. A promise to continue building their life together, not as a contract, but as a love story. They knew that there would still be challenges ahead, but for the first time they felt ready to face them together. Their marriage had started with a simple agreement, but now it was a bond that could never be broken. It was real, and it was theirs. As the months went by, Lily and Thomas continued to grow closer, their bond stronger than ever. What had begun as a contractual arrangement had blossomed into something neither of them could have predicted. They were no longer just business partners. They were truly partners in every sense of the word. Their shared moments of laughter, quiet walks, and meaningful conversations had become the foundation of their relationship, and neither of them could deny that they were falling in love. Yet, as their love deepened, new challenges began to arise. Thomas had always been a man of control, focused on his company, his legacy, and his empire. But now, with his heart opening to Lily, he found himself torn between his professional obligations and his personal life. He had been so consumed with work for so long that he was struggling to find the balance between being the CEO of Blackwood Enterprises and being the husband Lily deserved. Lily, on the other hand, had always been independent, but she was learning to lean on Thomas in ways she never thought possible. She had entered this marriage with a sense of uncertainty, but now she found herself invested in something far more than just financial stability. She was invested in Thomas, the man behind the business, the man with dreams and fears just like her. However, their growing connection did not come without its complications. One evening, as Thomas sat in his office, surrounded by stacks of paperwork and pending deals, Lily entered quietly, not wanting to disturb him. But when she saw the look of frustration on his face, she knew something was wrong. "Thomas," she said softly, walking up to his desk. "You've been working nonstop. Maybe it's time to take a break." He looked up, his eyes tired but grateful. "I can't afford to," he replied, rubbing his temples. "There's just too much at stake right now." Lily sat down beside him, her heart aching for him. "I understand, but you can't pour from an empty cup," she said gently. "You're only human, Thomas. You can't keep going like this." He leaned back in his chair, his eyes searching hers. "I don't know how to stop," he admitted, his voice thick with exhaustion. "I've spent my whole life building this company, and now that we're growing even bigger, I feel like I'm losing control of everything. I'm not sure how to balance all of this anymore." Lily reached out, placing her hand over his. "You don't have to do it alone," she said softly. "I'm here, and we're in this together. You've always been there for me, and now it's my turn to be there for you." For a moment, Thomas was silent, his gaze fixed on their joined hands. Then, slowly, he nodded, a small, almost imperceptible smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Thank you, Lily," he said quietly. "I don't know what I'd do without you." His words, though simple, meant more to her than he could ever understand. It was in that moment that Lily realized just how deeply she cared for him, how much she had come to depend on him not just as her husband, but as her partner in life. The next few days, Thomas made a conscious effort to spend more time with Lily and less time buried in his work. They took long walks through the park, had quiet dinners at home, and even took a few days off to visit the countryside. It was a refreshing change from the hectic pace they had been living, and it gave them both the chance to reconnect in ways they hadn't in a long time. But as they recharged, another unexpected challenge presented itself. One afternoon, Thomas received a call from his lawyer, informing him that there were some legal complications regarding the company's latest acquisition. The deal, which had been in the works for months, was now at risk of falling through. Thomas, ever the perfectionist, immediately fell back into his old habits, his mind consumed with the details of the deal. He spent hours in his office, poring over documents and making phone calls, while Lily waited anxiously at home. That evening, when he finally returned, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw clenched as he tried to mask his frustration. "Thomas," she said softly, "you need to take a break. We're in this together, remember?" He looked at her, his expression conflicted. I just can't stop, Lily. If this deal falls through, everything we've worked for could be jeopardized. She stepped closer to him, her hand gently resting on his arm. I know it's important, but you're not alone in this. You don't have to carry all the weight yourself. Thomas sighed, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I'm trying, but it feels like I'm failing at everything. Lily's heart broke for him. She knew how much the company meant to him, how deeply he cared about his work and the people he led. But she also knew that he couldn't continue sacrificing his happiness, his health, and their relationship for the sake of business. You're not failing, she said, her voice firm but gentle. You're just human, Thomas. And I love you for who you are, not for what you do. The words hung in the air between them, and for the first time in a long while, Thomas seemed to relax. He looked down at Lily, a mixture of gratitude and relief in his eyes. I don't know what I did to deserve you, he whispered, but I'm so glad I have you. Lily smiled, her heart swelling with love for the man standing before her. We're in this together, remember, she replied softly. And in that moment they both knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a team stronger together than apart. As the days passed, Lily and Thomas found a new rhythm in their relationship, one that balanced work, personal life, and their growing love for each other. It hadn't been easy. There had been challenges, moments of doubt, and times when the pressure of their professional lives threatened to pull them apart. But despite everything, they were learning how to navigate the complexities of their marriage, not just as business partners, but as true partners in life. They had come a long way since the days when their marriage had started as a mere contract, and now it felt like they were building a future together. However, there were still some hurdles to overcome. One evening, as Thomas returned home from yet another long day at the office, Lily noticed that he seemed distant, his mind clearly preoccupied with something. Thomas, is everything okay? She asked, concerned. He gave her a tight smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. Yeah, just a lot on my plate, he replied, sitting down on the couch, rubbing his temples. Lily sat beside him, her hand resting on his. Talk to me, she said softly. You don't have to carry everything alone. For a moment, Thomas said nothing, his gaze focused on the floor. Then, he sighed deeply and finally spoke. I feel like I'm losing control of everything, he admitted. The company, our life, everything. I've been so focused on making Blackwood Enterprises successful that I've forgotten what really matters. His voice cracked slightly, a hint of vulnerability breaking through his usual calm demeanor. Lily's heart ached for him. She had seen how hard he worked, how dedicated he was to his company, but she also knew that he had been sacrificing his happiness and their relationship for the sake of success. I understand, she said, squeezing his hand. But we can't keep living like this, Thomas. You're not alone in this anymore. We're partners, in everything. You don't have to do it all on your own. He looked up at her, his eyes filled with gratitude, but also something deeper regret. I've been so focused on proving myself, on being perfect, that I've lost sight of what really matters, he said quietly. And now, I'm afraid I've messed everything up. Lily shook her head gently. You haven't messed anything up. We're both learning, Thomas. This isn't about being perfect. It's about being together and supporting each other. We're in this for the long haul, no matter what. Her words seemed to ease some of the tension in him, and for the first time in a long while, he smiled at her, a real smile, full of warmth. You're right, he said softly. I've been so focused on work that I forgot to focus on us. I'm sorry. Lily leaned in, kissing him softly on the cheek. You don't have to apologize, she whispered. We're learning together. Over the next few weeks, Thomas made a conscious effort to change. He took more time off work, focusing on their relationship and the future they were building. They spent weekends away from the office, enjoying each other's company without the constant pressure of business looming over them. It wasn't always easy for Thomas, who had spent his entire adult life building his empire. But he was committed to finding balance between work and their marriage, balance between his personal and professional life. Lily, for her part, was learning to navigate the complexities of their relationship as well. She had come into the marriage with no expectations of love, only the hope for security, but now she found herself feeling things she hadn't expected. She was falling in love with Thomas, not just the CEO, but the man who had allowed himself to be vulnerable with her, the man who trusted her, and the man who, despite his flaws, cared deeply for her. One evening, as they sat on the balcony of their penthouse, watching the sunset over the city, Thomas turned to her with a serious expression. Lily, he began, his voice soft, there's something I need to say. She looked at him, sensing the weight of his words. What is it? She asked, her heart skipping a beat. I've been thinking a lot about us. About everything we've been through, he said. his gaze intense. "And I realized that I don't want to waste any more time. I want to be with you truly, fully, without any doubts. I love you, Lily." His words took her by surprise, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. But as she looked into his eyes, she realized that this was the man she had come to love, not the shy CEO, not the workaholic, but the man who had opened up to her, who had allowed her to see his true self. "I love you too, Thomas," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. It was the first time she had said those words to him, and it felt as though a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. "I've fallen for you, and I'm not afraid to admit it anymore." Thomas smiled, a genuine, heartfelt smile that lit up his face. "I've been afraid too," he admitted, "but now I'm not. I know what I want, and it's you, Lily. Always you." In that moment, everything felt right. The contract, the doubts, the struggles, they all seemed so small in comparison to what they had now. Love, trust, and a commitment to each other that was stronger than any obstacle they might face. They weren't just married by paper anymore, they were married by the heart, and that was all that mattered. As the sun dipped below the horizon, they sat together, hand in hand, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together, side by side. Months passed, and Lily and Thomas found themselves in a place they had never expected to be. Their relationship, once defined by an agreement, was now rooted in love, trust, and understanding. They had built something beautiful together, and as time went on, they became more and more inseparable. The balance they had worked so hard to find between their professional lives and personal lives had settled into a natural rhythm. Blackwood Enterprises continued to grow, but for the first time, Thomas had found the peace he had been searching for. He was no longer consumed by the pressure of his company. Instead, he found joy in sharing his life with Lily. Lily, too, had found a sense of peace she never imagined possible. She had entered this marriage with no expectations other than security, but she had gained so much more. She had found love, not just from Thomas, but from the life they were creating together. One evening, as they sat at the table in their dining room, the soft glow of candlelight illuminating their faces, Thomas took her hand across the table. "Lily," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion, "I've been thinking about everything we've been through, everything we've built, and I just want to say how grateful I am to have you in my life." Lily's heart swelled at his words, the sincerity in his voice making her feel seen, appreciated, and loved. "I feel the same way, Thomas," she replied, her voice soft yet filled with certainty. "I never imagined that this marriage, that this life, would bring me so much happiness. But with you, it feels like everything has fallen into place." Thomas smiled at her, a smile full of warmth and tenderness, one that reached his eyes and made her feel like the most important person in the world. "I don't know what I would have done without you," he said quietly. "You've taught me so much about love, about balance, about living for more than just success. And I promise you, no matter what happens, I'm going to keep fighting for us, for this life we've built." Lily felt a lump in her throat, her heart full to the brim. She had never imagined that a marriage that started with such uncertainty would evolve into something so solid, so real. "You don't have to promise, Thomas," she whispered. "You've already shown me what love is, and that's all I need." The years that followed were filled with growth and joy. They traveled together, explored new places, and made memories that would last a lifetime. Both of them had learned to cherish the small moments, the quiet mornings with coffee, the late-night talks about dreams and the future, and the shared laughter in the most unexpected places. Their life was no longer about what they had built, but about what they continued to build together. Their love became the foundation of everything. One day, as they walked hand in hand through the park, surrounded by the vibrant colors of autumn, Thomas stopped and turned to Lily. There was a look of determination in his eyes, a glimmer of the man he had become over the years. "Lily," he said, his voice soft but filled with conviction, "I want to take the next step. I want to make sure that everything we've built is protected, not just for us, but for the future, for our family." Lily looked at him, her heart racing. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice filled with curiosity. "I want to build something that lasts," he said, his eyes steady on hers. "I want to build a legacy for us, something we can pass on, something that reflects everything we've worked for." Lily's breath caught in her throat as she realized what he was asking. "Are you saying—" She trailed off, her words caught in the moment. "Yes," Thomas said, smiling softly. "I want to build a future with you, one that's secure and full of love. I want us to have everything we've ever dreamed of. And so, In that quiet moment, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the promise of the future, Thomas asked Lily to take one final step with him. Together, they would create something that would outlast time, something that would continue to grow, even when they were no longer there to nurture it. The love they had found, the bond they had built, was the legacy they would leave behind. As they embraced, the world around them seemed to fade away. It was just the two of them, together, knowing that no matter where life took them, they had already found everything they needed in each other. Their journey was far from over, but they were ready for whatever came next. They were partners, not just in business or in marriage, but in life. And that, to them, was the greatest gift of all.